I was 12 years old the first time my parents left me home alone at night. It was a cool Saturday evening in late September. The sun had just dipped below the rooftops, and our quiet suburban street was washed in that soft bluish haze that comes just before full darkness. My parents were attending a dinner party 2 blocks away, and they promised they would be back by 9. I wasn't nervous at first. I grew up in that house. I knew every sound it made, the way the floorboards creaked near the hallway, how the old refrigerator rattled when the compressor kicked in, and how the wind always seemed to whistle faintly through the attic vent. It was all familiar, comforting, even. I made myself a bowl of popcorn, grabbed a blanket, and settled on the couch in the living room to watch TV. The house was quiet except for the muffled laughter of the sitcom playing on the screen. Outside, the street was almost completely still. Our neighborhood wasn't the kind of place where strange things happen. People waved when they drove by, kids rode their bikes until dusk, and every front yard was neatly kept. My parents always said we lived in one of the safest parts of town. I believed them. For the first half hour, everything felt perfectly normal. Then I noticed something. It started with the lights. The small table lamp in the corner flickered once, quick and sharp, like a camera flash. I glanced over but brushed it off as an old bulb, but a few minutes later, the hallway light did the same thing. Just one fast flicker. I muted the TV and sat there for a second, waiting to see if it happened again. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Nothing seemed out of place. I turned the TV back on and tried to ignore it. Another 20 minutes passed, and I got up to grab a soda from the kitchen. As I walked through the hallway, paused. The air felt different somehow. Cooler, like a draft had slipped in from somewhere. I checked the windows. All of them were shut. That's when I heard a soft, muffled sound coming from upstairs. It was faint, just enough to make me freeze where I stood, almost like something had fallen over. I told myself it was nothing. A book sliding off a shelf. The house settling. Something normal. But when I reached the kitchen, I noticed something I couldn't explain. The back door. It was unlocked. My parents are obsessive about locking doors. They double-checked them every night without fail. I knew I had heard the click when they left earlier, but now, the bolt was turned halfway. Not fully open, but not secure either. I locked it again and stood there for a moment, listening. The silence was heavier now. Even the TV in the living room felt distant, like the sound couldn't reach me anymore. I tried to shake it off and headed back to the couch, forcing myself to focus on the show. But I couldn't relax. My eyes kept drifting to the hallway, and my ears kept straining for any noise from upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard it again. A single, sharp sound. This time, it was clearer, like the creak of a floorboard. I muted the TV and held my breath. Nothing. I thought about calling my parents, but I didn't want them to think I couldn't handle being alone. I was 12. I didn't want to sound like a little kid. I got up slowly and walked toward the staircase, just to prove to myself that everything was fine. The steps groaned under my weight as I climbed halfway up and looked toward the dark hallway above. "Hello?" I called out softly. No answer. I stood there a little longer, heart pounding, until I convinced myself it was all in my head. I went back down, turned the TV volume up, and wrapped the blanket tighter around myself. That's when the phone rang. I nearly jumped out of my skin. The old landline in the kitchen buzzed loud and sharp. I hesitated before answering, gripping the receiver tight. "Hello," it said. Static. Just faint static, like wind brushing against the line. Then, after a few seconds, the call disconnected. I set the phone down slowly. When I turned around, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The hallway light, the one leading to the staircase, was on now. I hadn't turned it on. I froze. At the bottom of the stairs, staring at the glowing hallway light, I was sure I hadn't turned it on. I'd walked past that switch several times already tonight, and I always left it off. For a few seconds, I stood perfectly still, listening to the faint hum of the bulb above. My chest rose and fell faster than before. I told myself maybe I had bumped the switch earlier without realizing it, but I didn't believe it. I walked slowly toward the staircase, each step feeling heavier than the last. The house was so quiet now that even the sound of my own breathing seemed too loud. I reached the base of the stairs and looked up at the second floor. The hallway stretched into darkness past the light, ending in shadows I couldn't see through. Something about the silence bothered me. It wasn't just quiet. It was wrong. It felt like the house was holding its breath. I swallowed hard and called out again, louder this time. Hello? Is anyone up there? No answer. I gripped the railing and climbed the stairs slowly, forcing myself to breathe evenly. Every creak beneath my feet made me flinch. Halfway up, I stopped and listened. That's when I heard it, a soft, slow sound, coming from above. Breathing. Very faint, but unmistakable. Someone was breathing just beyond the top of the stairs. I held perfectly still, straining to hear. The sound stopped the moment I did. My throat felt dry, and my hands were shaking as I reached the last step. I turned toward the hallway, scanning the shadows, but nothing moved. I could see my bedroom door slightly ajar, the bathroom door wide open, and the small storage closet closed tight. I whispered under my breath, "It's nothing. Just the wind." But the air wasn't moving. The whole house felt frozen. I walked carefully toward my room, checking each door as I passed. When I reached my bedroom, pushed the door open and flicked on the light. Nothing. Everything was exactly where I left it. I turned back toward the hallway, trying to convince myself I was being ridiculous, when I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. The bathroom faucet was dripping, a steady, rhythmic tap against the sink basin. I walked over, annoyed more than anything, and twisted the knob tighter. But when I leaned down, I saw tiny wet footprints on the tile floor, bare feet, small like a child's. I froze in place, staring at them. I hadn't been in the bathroom at all tonight, and I had socks on. My breath caught in my throat, and I backed slowly into the hallway. That's when I noticed something else. The storage closet door. It was open now. Just a crack, but enough to see the darkness inside. I was sure it had been shut when I came upstairs. My entire body tensed as I stared at that narrow sliver of blackness. My mind screamed at me to run back downstairs, but my legs wouldn't move. I heard something shift inside the closet, just the faintest sound, like fabric brushing against wood. I took one step backward. The old floorboard groaned beneath me, and immediately the noise inside stopped. For several seconds, there was silence. Then, slowly, the door creaked open wider on its own. I ran. I bolted down the stairs 2 at a time, heart pounding so hard, it felt like it might burst. I grabbed the cordless phone from the kitchen counter and dialed my parents' number with shaking hands. No answer. I tried again. Nothing. That's when I noticed the back door. It was unlocked again. I stood frozen in the kitchen, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles hurt. I had locked that door earlier. I was sure of it. I locked it again, this time pushing hard to make sure the bolt clicked into place. Then I heard something that made my stomach twist. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps above me, moving across the second floor hallway. Someone was inside the house. I clamped my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. My eyes darted to the front door, but it had a deadbolt lock that I couldn't undo quickly. My parents always left the keys hanging on a hook by the door, but they weren't there. I was trapped. I crouched low behind the kitchen counter, clutching the phone, trying to decide if I should call the police. Before I could, the house phone rang. The loud, piercing sound made me jump so hard I almost dropped it. I hesitated, then picked up. "Hello?" I whispered. This time, there was no static, no silence. A low voice whispered my name. Then the line went dead. I stood frozen with the phone still pressed to my ear, the whisper of my name echoing in my head. My breathing was shallow, shaky, uneven. I set the receiver back onto the cradle as quietly as I could, forcing myself not to make a sound. My hands were trembling so badly that the plastic rattled when I let go of the phone. The house felt different now. It was no longer my house, not the place I grew up in. The silence had weight to it, pressing down on me, making every creak of the floor and hum of the refrigerator sound magnified. I crouched low behind the kitchen counter and tried to listen carefully. Above me, the footsteps had stopped. That should have made me feel safer, but it didn't. I realized suddenly that silence meant they were listening too. I gripped the phone again and tried dialing 911, but before I could finish, the dial tone cut out completely. The line went dead, leaving only the faint hiss of static. That's when the kitchen phone rang again. I jumped, fumbling with the receiver before lifting it to my ear. "Who is this?" I whispered, my voice shaking. This time, there was no whisper, no static, nothing but breathing. Slow, deep breaths. I hung up immediately, clutching the phone against my chest. I scanned the kitchen. The back door was locked now, but I kept glancing at it anyway, afraid it might open at any second. I looked toward the front door, hoping maybe I could make a run for it, but it was too far, and whoever was upstairs would hear me instantly. I decided my best chance was to stay hidden and quiet. I crawled low to the floor, moving from the kitchen into the living room, making as little sound as possible. The glow from the TV was the only light in the room, casting moving shadows against the walls. I reached for the remote and turned the volume down until it was almost silent. Then I heard something that made my stomach twist. The creak of the stairs. One step, then another. Slow, deliberate footsteps making their way down. I pressed myself flat against the carpet, staring at the edge of the living room doorway, waiting to see movement, waiting to see feet appear. Nothing. The footsteps stopped halfway down the staircase. I held my breath, every muscle in my body locked, listening so hard it hurt. The silence stretched out so long that I thought maybe I imagined it. Then the sound of the phone ringing shattered the quiet, but this time, it wasn't the kitchen phone. It was my parents' bedroom phone upstairs. The shrill ringing echoed through the house, breaking the silence and making my heart race even faster. I wanted to scream at it to stop. After the third ring, it cut off suddenly. A second later, I heard the faint sound of someone picking up the receiver upstairs, and then, I heard my name again. This time louder, clearer, drawn out in a slow whisper. I gripped the edge of the couch so tightly that my fingers ached. My vision blurred for a second, and my ears felt like they were buzzing. Whoever was in this house knew my name, knew I was here, and wanted me to know they knew. I decided I couldn't stay hidden anymore. I had to move. I crawled to the hallway, keeping my head low, and slowly peeked around the corner toward the staircase. The hallway light upstairs was still on, but now the closet door at the top of the stairs was fully open. I was certain I had left it shut earlier. I backed away from the stairs slowly, careful not to make a sound, and retreated to the kitchen again. I reached for the cordless phone to try calling 911 one more time, praying the line would come back. Before I could dial, the phone slipped from my sweaty hands and clattered loudly onto the tile. The noise was deafening in the silence. I froze, staring at the stairs. Then came the sound of running footsteps above me, fast, heavy, moving from one end of the hallway to the other. I ran into the pantry and shut the door behind me, pressing my back against the shelves. My chest was heaving, every breath shallow and ragged. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. From somewhere outside the pantry, the kitchen phone rang again. I covered my mouth with my hand, trying to muffle my breathing, when I heard the faintest whisper come through the walls. "Come out." The voice was low, soft, and so close, it felt like it was right behind me. I stayed completely still, every muscle screaming to move but refusing to obey. Then came 3 sharp knocks against the pantry door. I didn't answer. Another 3 knocks, louder this time, and then silence. I waited, straining to hear any sound, but the house was dead quiet. Finally, after what felt like hours, I reached for the door handle, turning it slowly, inch by inch, trying not to make a sound. I pushed the pantry door open just enough to peek out. The kitchen was empty. I stepped out cautiously, 1 foot at a time, scanning every corner of the room. Everything looked normal, but the air felt heavier, thicker, like the house itself was holding its breath again. Then, from upstairs, came a single, loud crash, like something heavy falling over. I looked up toward the ceiling, every nerve in my body screaming, knowing I had nowhere left to hide. The crash from upstairs echoed through the house like thunder, rattling the picture frames on the living room wall. I flinched hard and instinctively ducked, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter for balance. My throat felt tight, my chest burning as I tried to catch my breath. I knew I couldn't stay downstairs any longer. Whatever was up there was moving, knocking things over, making noise deliberately. They weren't hiding anymore. They wanted me to know they were there. I crouched low and scanned the kitchen, my eyes darting between the front door and the staircase. The keys were gone. The phone line was dead, and the nearest neighbor was several houses away. My only choice was to face whatever was upstairs. I forced myself forward on shaky legs, each step toward the staircase making my body feel heavier, like the air itself was resisting me. My socks brushed against the wooden floor, making no sound at all, but every groan of the old house beneath my feet felt deafening. I reached the bottom of the staircase and stared up at the hallway above. The light at the top was still on, casting a pale yellow glow against the walls. Beyond that light was darkness, deep and unbroken. I gripped the railing tightly and started to climb, one slow step at a time. Halfway up, I froze. A whisper drifted down from the hallway above. My name. I didn't respond. I forced myself to keep going, each step making my legs weaker. When I reached the top, I stopped and listened. The entire second floor was silent. The only sound was my own breathing, shallow and unsteady. I stepped forward carefully, moving toward my parents' bedroom at the end of the hall. The door was closed, and faint shadows shifted just under the crack, as if someone was moving slowly on the other side. Before I could take another step, the bathroom door creaked open behind me. I spun around instantly, heart slamming in my chest, but there was nothing inside. Just the empty bathroom, the dripping faucet, and those same small wet footprints on the tile floor. The sound of a low, drawn-out breath came from directly behind me. I turned slowly, dread locking every muscle in my body. The storage closet door, halfway down the hall, was now wide open. I stepped backward without thinking, retreating toward my bedroom, when suddenly the phone in my parents' room began to ring again. The sharp, shrill sound cut through the silence like a blade. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3, then it stopped. I stood frozen, gripping the doorframe of my room for balance, trying to decide whether to hide or run. That was when the closet door slammed shut so hard it shook the walls. I gasped and bolted into my bedroom, slamming the door behind me and locking it. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the latch, but somehow I managed to secure it. I backed away slowly until my legs hit the edge of the bed, then crawled underneath, pressing myself flat against the carpet. The dust made my throat itch, but I forced myself to stay silent, breathing through my nose in short, shallow bursts. From the hallway, I heard footsteps again. Slow, unsteady. They stopped directly outside my bedroom door. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then came a soft scraping sound, like fingernails dragging across the wood. I clamped both hands over my mouth to keep from making a sound. The doorknob rattled once, then again, harder. I shut my eyes tight and prayed for the noise to stop. Then, suddenly, silence. I waited, straining my ears, terrified to move. Minutes passed. Nothing. Finally, I crawled out from under the bed, moving toward the door on shaking legs. I placed my ear against the wood, listening carefully. No sound. I unlocked the latch as quietly as I could and eased the door open. Just a crack. The hallway was empty. I stepped out slowly, gripping the wall for support, my entire body trembling from head to toe. The light above flickered once, then steadied. I looked toward the stairs, wondering if maybe I could make a run for the front door, but then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The front door downstairs was wide open. It swung slowly on its hinges, creaking with each movement, letting in the cool night air. I took one cautious step toward the staircase when I heard something behind me. The faint sound of a door closing. I turned my head slowly, heart pounding, and realized the sound came from my own bedroom. The door I had just left wide open was now shut tight. I stared at it, frozen in place, unable to breathe. Then, from inside the room, came a soft, low whisper. It was my name.